What's up, friends? Happy Monday. Before we hop into the show, got to tell you about a new partner alert we have over at DNVR, Solace Meds. And not only are they a premium dispensary for you guys with smoking hot deals, but Solace Meds has 4 convenient locations, one in Fort Collins, one in Wheat Ridge, one off Broadway, and one just blocks away from East Colfax from the DNVR bar. And guys, they've got an awesome deal going on that ends this week. Right now, they're giving away a trip to Jamaica in the month of April. Not kidding you at all. Giving away a trip to Jamaica. So what do you have to do that? Well, head into one of their 6 locations. They also have 2 in Oklahoma City and sign up to win that trip to Jamaica. They'll give you the details on how to enter, or you can visit www.solacemeds.com/sweepstakes to find out the rules, or just head into any location and ask a bud tender how you can enter to win. So head over to the DNVR bar that just had a couple blocks away and enter into Solace Meds and get into that trip to Jamaica. They'll make your cannabis shopping experience easy. So head to their website, view their menu, order online, and pick up at your convenience. So head to solacemeds.com and purchase from there. And the 7-day trip to Jamaica is all-inclusive, and it's a trip to paradise. Solace Meds is located just blocks east of Colfax from the DNVR bar, off Broadway, Wheat Ridge, and Fort Collins. And when you make your purchase, be sure to use the code DNVR20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. There's no better way to celebrate this month of April, which includes 420, and getting in with Solace Meds. And of course, use that magical code DNVR20 for 20% off and enter in a trip to Jamaica. No purchase necessary. Open to legal residents of Colorado, 21 and over, and 18 and over in Oklahoma. Ends 4/30/21, so get in there soon. Official rules, www.solacemeds.com/sweepstakes. Void where prohibited. All right, Mace, let's hop into the show.
Number 1 for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach Mace, Arcade at the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 still waiting for, well, bring on the chase. Out on the field at Mile High, Broncos win is our desire. Coupled with Breck, Brew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, DNVR. We are DNVR.
Woo! Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast. I'm your host, Zach Stevens, joined by my man, Andrew Mason, and it is draft week. So pumped for this week to roll around, and so pumped for all of you that are joining us here. Got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver Online. Time and time again, the thing that will protect you against economic downturn is an education allowing you to adapt into varying careers, and you can go build your toolbox over at MSU Denver Online, and they don't care whether you're in class or virtual. It's all the same degree to them. So make sure to check them out over at MSU Denver Online. Mace, my boy, what's up? Happy draft week, my friend.
Yeah, thank goodness it's finally here. We're, T-minus 3 days until the draft. I find myself thinking back to the first draft that I covered back in 2000 and was working for the league site, helping put in the picks and monitoring some online chats right there at the theater at Madison Square Garden in New York City, where they were holding the draft at the time. But you got into day 2, and the once robust gallery of day 1, because it was only 2 days at the time, had thinned out to just a few stragglers hanging out and watching the draft. And it was about the 5th round or so. And it took a while for a pick to be announced. And some guy sounded like he was from Brooklyn, just leaned back in his chair and said, "Make the pick already!" And that's how I feel. Let's get to the draft already. This is just, But by this time last year, Zach, we were done. It was over. The draft was done on this date in 2020. So I think my rhythm is completely off a little bit, because the draft should be done, at least by last year's schedule, and it's not.
Well, in 1 week from today, Mace, we'll know the entire Broncos class. We'll be breaking it down. Will it include a first-round quarterback? We will know in 1 week. And Mace, the first draft that I covered was the first pick that I ever covered was one Paxton Lynch. And, it's only been uphill since at least. So I guess that's good. And Mace, speaking of quarterbacks, lot of quarterback news coming out this weekend. I've been talking to sources. You've been talking to sources. The national media has been talking to sources. And to me, I really think this has been really good weekend for the Broncos if they want Justin Fields. And everything that I've heard, Mace, is that if they're going quarterback, that's their guy. And so I think everything that I've heard and everything that's been reported just points to that being very, very possible. And of course, we had the news come out yesterday from Ian Rapaport saying that he thinks the 49ers are narrowing in on two candidates, Mac Jones and Trey Lance. So not Justin Fields. We know that there's been a lot of hype around Justin Fields, and Mace this weekend, talking to multiple people, it was made pretty clear to me that, again, if the Broncos want a guy, it's Justin Fields. And so the most important thing is that he slides past that number 3 spot. And man, if this is true and Ian Rapaport's right, he's not going to be picked third.
Yeah, he won't be picked third. Then the question is he going to be picked fourth? What do the Falcons do? Do they stand pat? Do they pick Kyle? They stand pat and pick a quarterback, or they pick Kyle Pitts? We know they like Kyle Pitts, or do they trade down? And once you get to pick 3 and then pick 4 is where the draft gets interesting. And the reason why 4 is interesting is because while the Falcons, I think, would love to have Kyle Pitts on their roster, they are also in a significant cap crunch that has prevented them from doing much of anything this offseason. They are within $3.5 million of the salary cap limit. And what that means is they haven't been able to do much in the last month and a half. They're looking at holes on their roster immediately they need to fill, and they may be in the position where they say, well, we need to accumulate picks this year. So does that make them more amenable to a trade down, perhaps? And the thing is, I don't think that trade down would be with the Broncos. I would be shocked if they trade up to 4. So that's one of those things that has the potential to put a wrench in things, is if you're waiting on Atlanta and wanting to make sure that Atlanta picks, and preferably Atlanta picks Kyle Pitts for the Broncos' needs. If that happens, then I think you're in really good shape, because I don't think the Bengals are trading at 5. The Bengals don't have a habit of trading down, even though it would make a lot of sense. And then pick 6 with Miami. We know that Chris Greer and George Payton have spoken. Our friend Benjamin Albright said that one of the topics was about Miami initiating the possibility of a trade down from 6 to 9 with the Broncos. And I just, for giggles, tossed out on Twitter a trade proposal that would make sense, which would be 6 and 81 from Miami for picks 9 and 40. So Miami moves down 3 slots, turns a 3rd rounder into a 2nd rounder, and kind of through the back channels, I was told that would make sense. The question is, could Miami get more from a more desperate team? Now, the Broncos have that 9th pick. So they have, let's not forget, the most tangible asset in a trade up is the picks you have this year. And with the 9th pick, the Broncos have a greater tangible asset than the Bears, than Washington, than New England, because they're picking lower. The question is what those teams are willing to deal from future years, which is a little bit of guesswork based on draft position. The advantage the Broncos have in any negotiation is the 9 pick is much more valuable than 15, 19, or 20.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mason. And I think we need to take a step back really quick. And something you said that I've heard as well is don't be looking at the 4th overall pick for the Broncos to make the move, because that would cost a 1st-round pick, potentially a 1st-round pick plus, as we discovered on our exercise this past week on 3 Ring Circus. So that's not where it would be. But the good news is we haven't heard any buzz about Justin Fields to Atlanta. We've heard some Trey Lance buzz to Atlanta, but that doesn't matter. If Justin Fields is there at 4, I'm not concerned that the Falcons are going to take him. So you're right. He falls to 5. At 5, the Bengals have had no history of trading down in past drafts. They're going to want their guy. So if he's there at 6, that's the spot to watch. And Mace, I just think because of the quarterback premium, the Broncos would have to give up more than your trade proposal. I think it may just straight up be a second-round pick. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's a second-round pick this year. So 9, 40, and then next year's third-round pick or something like that. But to me, not giving up a first-round pick would be huge. And if you make that move to 6, you guarantee he's going to be there. And I think there's going to be that extra quarterback premium specifically with that 6-7 pick, because today we have Tom Pelissero coming out and saying that several teams are looking to jump into the top 10 for a quarterback specifically. And one of those teams, he said, was the New England Patriots, who could have their eyes on Justin Fields. And just like you said, Mace, the great thing about the Broncos is if the Dolphins move back and do make a trade to move back so some team can go up and get Justin Fields, the great thing is Miami would only have to move back 3 spots. They could still get their Devontae Smith. They could still get Jalen Waddle. I would think Kyle Pitts will be off the board by then, but maybe Jamar Chase is there for them. They could still get an elite wide receiver, which is what everyone thinks they want, by only moving back there. If they move back to 15, they're probably going to lose that guy and not be able to get him. So the Broncos have that big advantage. But what this also says to me, Mace, is the Broncos, if he's there, if Justin Fields is there at 6, and I've heard he is their guy, and they would make a move up for him and maybe only him, make the move. Don't just think, oh my gosh, this is falling great for us. He's there at 6. We can wait for him to be there at 9, because everything points that someone is going to make a trade. And Miami is a good trade candidate, not just for the Broncos, but for other teams. I think Miami's the best trade candidate for the Broncos. 7 with Detroit, I think that's a good trade candidate for other teams. And 8, you could also see the Panthers move back. So you can't wait there at 9, hoping that Justin Fields falls. If you get lucky and he doesn't go at 4, well, just run to the bank and cash that ticket in at 6.
Well, here's the thing about the 6th pick as well. Number one, I mentioned the Greer and Peyton bond. They have known each other going back to Miami nearly 2 decades ago. They work together with the Dolphins. And so that's why I don't think you can diminish the significance of the fact that they have talked in the last week. And the two of them are likely, kind of on paper, but they're likely to work out a deal that is mutually beneficial for both parties. The interesting thing, of course, is you talk about the Patriots getting in there, and a deal with the Broncos that prevented the Patriots from getting a quarterback would be of some significant benefit to the Miami Dolphins. I do not think that Chris Greer, even though a long time ago he worked for the Patriots and Brian Flores worked for the Patriots, I do not think they are in the business of doing a favor to the New England Patriots in their bid to get a quarterback that they may covet.
No, so, I agree.
And that is something that also helps the Broncos. So, I mean, consider me shell-shocked if the Dolphins deal with the Patriots and allow them to get the quarterback, which then means the competition to move up are 2 teams that are sitting at 19 and 20. And effectively that, the Dolphins may be a team, Zach, that only have 16 players with first-round grades. And if that's the case, then maybe Miami looks at Chicago at 19, or Chicago at 19, Washington at 20, or vice versa, my bad, and says, okay, that's a bridge too far. And Denver sitting at 9 makes sense.
Mace, I totally agree that the Dolphins probably aren't trading with the Patriots in order for them to land their franchise quarterback. But what you can't do is then just say he's going to fall to 9, because the Detroit Lions at 7 would be willing to deal with the Patriots. The Carolina Panthers have no reason not to deal with the Patriots. So that's why you take everything that's good and just move up to 6 right there. Doesn't cost you a first-round pick.
And here's the thing also, you mentioned the Lions and the Patriots. The Lions more than willing to deal, I think, or the Panthers. Sorry. And the Panthers at 8, they had, there have been reports they're going to give the 5th-year option to Sam Darnold, but they have not officially said they are giving the 5th-year option to Sam Darnold. I think we all assume it, but it may not necessarily happen. Carolina is not out of the woods when it comes to the quarterback position. You can't sit there at 9 and assume that Carolina isn't going to go quarterback.
No.
That's something that is still very much in play. And so there are a lot of reasons why, as long as the Falcons stand pat and don't go quarterback, don't go Justin Fields, 6 is the spot that makes sense. And hey, 6 has produced more Hall of Fame players than most spots in the top 10.
I love it.
As was once said on Seinfeld, 6 is good. You like 6?
6 could be very good for the Broncos and George Payton on Thursday night. And something else that I heard, there's 2 things. One is that maybe the Trey Lance to Denver hype isn't as much. And I do think that it's not where you and I talk about it. Trey Lance and Justin Fields, to me, either are fantastic. I think you're the same. You favor Fields a little more. I feel Lance a little more. From what I was told, I don't think the Broncos view it the same way. I think Fields is clearly their guy, and they're intrigued with Lance, but I think so much so that we haven't talked about Mac Jones much. And I think that Mac Jones and Trey Lance are actually on a similar level in terms of the Broncos' eyes, while they may be kind of neck and neck, you have Justin Fields above them. So, and what we know about George Payton is he's not just going to take a quarterback. So I think the guy that really is going to be the quarterback for the Broncos in this draft, if they get one, is Justin Fields. Let's say Trey Lance is sitting there at 9. I wouldn't be shocked to see a trade back for the Broncos for a quarterback team, and maybe the Bears, the Washington football team. So that's kind of what I heard this weekend. And Mace, we have some people in the comment section as well, really asking about this Jordan Love rumors coming out today. And to me, all I've seen about that is that I believe FanDuel put Jordan Love as the Broncos the favorite for him to go to. That's not a rumor. That's just a site putting that up there. There's not much to that.
To put it kindly, I'm not gonna use the same word as you did, Zach, on Friday that stunned all of us.
Shooting the ship.
This FanDuel article, this is throwing crap at the wall.
Right.
That's all. That's what this is. This isn't a rumor. This is somebody just saying, okay, even though it says Jordan Love trade rumors, this is just throwing out 3 possibilities. There's no indication that Jordan Love is on the radar for the Broncos, even though I will say this: if the Broncos didn't get Justin Fields, Trey Lance, or Mac Jones, and they wanted to add to the room, would Jordan Love make sense? Yes, he would. But this is not something that I think has more than a 0.05% chance of happening. This is not something that is realistic. This is just tossing out, hey, it might make sense, but there's absolutely nothing to the notion that Jordan Love is high on the Broncos priority list. Remember, what the Broncos are looking for is somebody who can improve the room, somebody who they believe is more than what they have in Drew Lock. Jordan Love is not that type of prospect right now.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Mace. He is not, and so don't worry. Don't put anything behind that. Yes. At least for right now. That is just a company, and they're getting buzzed by putting that out. So don't worry about that. We're not going to
talking about it. The fact that people are talking about it in the comment section, we just had to mention it here. They won. They got what they wanted.
And that's what I was going to say. We're done talking about it.
Yeah, you know that meme that's like, here's that attention you were seeking. Well, there you go. Yep. Congratulations. Happy Monday.
Exactly. And so, Mace, you said that the Broncos want to bring in competition, someone that's an upgrade. They believe Justin Fields would be that upgrade. Don't really know how much competition that would be and what that would look like. But let's say Justin Fields does go 4. Atlanta takes him, or Atlanta trades with someone else other than the Broncos, takes Justin Fields, and the Broncos draft plans then drastically change, because instead of moving up and getting Justin Fields, like I said, I'm at the point now from what I heard this weekend where if Trey Lance is on the board at 9, I'm taking him. I think you're taking. We're all taking him. I'm not quite sure the Broncos are taking him. And so even if he's there, and especially if quarterbacks aren't there, I think the Broncos are going to be trying to trade back. But then what does that mean for the quarterback competition? I really think that we're narrowing in on Justin Fields or Teddy Bridgewater. And I think it was Peter King that had some buzz about Teddy Bridgewater either this morning or this weekend, saying he wouldn't be surprised if Teddy Bridgewater is dealt to the Broncos during the draft. And Mace, we've kind of said that for weeks now, is that is what could happen if the Broncos don't get a first-round quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater being traded to the Broncos. And so I think we're kind of narrowing in on those two possibilities. Justin Fields being there at 6, making the trade up to get him. If not, wait till day 2, end of day 2, day 3 of the draft for the Broncos to trade a 3rd, 4th, 5th rounder for Teddy.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, Zach, because this is something that I heard about a couple of days ago. And again, some of these things that you start hearing from different people, some of it contradicts the other stuff, so you don't know what to believe. But the possibility of drafting somebody and then still trading for a veteran, is something that, believe it or not, is in play as well. And some of because they may look at someone that they draft and say, okay, is Drew Lock the best partner for this guy? Hey, I would love a Fields Lock competition. I think, Zach, you would agree on that.
Absolutely.
Peter King in his mock draft spoke of a Trey Lance Drew Lock competition when he mocked Lance to the Broncos and suggested that Lance could take the job by Halloween. But it's possible they may look at the landscape if they get if they get a player like Justin Fields, whether they move up or stand pat, and say, all right, maybe we need a different type of quarterback with experience in there. And that's where, even if they draft a Justin Fields, the door may not be closed on Teddy Bridgewater. The door probably isn't even closed on Gardner Minshew being a Denver Bronco as well, if they view those types of quarterbacks as better fits to help the development of a Justin Fields than Drew Lock being on hand. So it's something where the whole quarterback complexion of that the complexion of that room may not be done, even if the Broncos pick Justin Fields there in the top 10.
And Mace, I would love if the Broncos went out, traded up, got Justin Fields, and then traded a 5th round pick, 4th round pick for Teddy Bridgewater. And why I would love that isn't because necessarily I'd love Teddy Bridgewater starting week 1 while Justin Fields is still developing. That's not the sexiest move, but it would be a 100% commitment to the quarterback room. We've seen 25% commitments since Peyton Manning retired to the quarterback room. And that gets you, 5 straight years of missing the playoffs. That gets you 4 straight losing seasons. That's what it gets you. So this would be a huge commitment to the quarterback room. And I would absolutely love that. And what we see is we would see Teddy Bridgewater be a very good guy in the room for Justin Fields. We would see Teddy Bridgewater be able to get the team to, 4-2 in the first 6 games if Justin Fields still needs some time. But then Justin Fields would clearly take over. And having Drew Lock and Justin Fields, while it would be exciting, it doesn't make the most sense in terms of what your quarterback room would look like. So not only are we talking about a trade up to get Justin Fields, a trade to get Teddy Bridgewater, we're also probably talking about a trade to send Drew Lock somewhere else. And maybe it's the Lions. There's a lot of teams that would make sense. Maybe it's the Falcons if they go Kyle Pitts and then they kind of get their developmental guy. But we're talking about Drew probably not being here. And the Broncos could absolutely, and rightfully so, build it as this is the best thing for us. This is also the best thing for Drew, because Drew would clearly not be in the Broncos' plans this year, next year, the next 5 years. And that we're talking about, late 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick. Maybe at the end, what you trade for Teddy Bridgewater is what you get for Drew Lock. So it's kind of a wash there. Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, when we start talking about like all trades back and forth, maybe you're looking at that trade up scenario that involves getting an extra mid-round pick back. So it's 2 picks for 2 picks. So George Paton could start a deal with 9 picks in this year's draft and end it with 9 picks. If you trade for Teddy Bridgewater, and then you trade away Drew Lock, you've still got 9 picks, and that allows you to maybe make another trade down at some point and get to what appears to be a little bit of a magic number of 10. That's basically previewing the article I'm writing today on the DNVR about about the history of the Vikings with George Payton there in terms of what they're doing. He talked a little bit about that last week. That's kind of the launching point for what I'm getting into on these draft trades. But pick accumulation, even if you're talking about getting later round picks back in order to move up, is something that is part and parcel of George Payton's thinking. So you might make all this wheeling and dealing. You might transform the quarterback room, and then the result of it might be you still have at least as many picks as you came into the draft with. And that's something that would make George Payton smile, because as he's talked about, he wants all the darts. Just figures it's more chance to hit the bullseye, and he views 6th and 7th round darts as having some value as well. Even in a year where this draft class, you get to round 5, 6, and 7, doesn't necessarily appear as deep as other years. And yes, Jared, you can get a 75. That's
super chat, Jared, coming in for all of us to give us a 75. Hey. I absolutely love it. And we had the comment section blowing up for a second, talking about, who would beat out Drew Lock in camp if they brought in a rookie, and also Mac Jones's accuracy. Yes, Mac Jones, the point was brought up that Mac Jones was not accurate on his pro day, missed a couple passes. That is true. Mac Jones is very accurate, and that's one of the reasons why San Francisco may grab him at 3. So just jumping in the chat there. And Mace, really quick, let's say the Broncos don't make 2 trades. It's just 1 trade, move up, get Fields. Of the guys the Broncos could draft, so not Zach Wilson, not Trevor Lawrence, and let's just say that the other 3 guys have a chance of being drafted by the Broncos. What do the odds stack up like with Drew Lock competing with all 3 of those guys? Who would win a competition in week 1?
Okay. First of all, I'd say let's start with Lance and Lock. Lance-a-Lock. It sounds kind of like
Lance-a-Lock.
The Lance-a-Lock competition. There's your headline right there. Drew Lock's the favorite. I would say you'd probably give Trey Lance at best 4-1 odds to win that competition.
Ooh, and I would take those odds, but I think you're right. Drew Lock would be the favorite for sure. Trey Lance is just straight up the most raw guy in this draft, and maybe even going back to multiple rounds and including multiple rounds in this draft there. Although I wouldn't be this is the one that you don't really want to see. This is the one that you want to see a veteran brought in to help Trey Lance. But if it's just these 2 guys, then Drew gets the nod.
Yeah, Mac Jones and Justin Fields are more interesting. And the thing with those quarterback prospects that may give a potential leg up, certainly I think Justin Fields has a leg up in terms of possible quarterbacks here over Mac Jones and Trey Lance. But Jones and Fields appear to be more ready to go right away. And there would be a path for either of them to beat out Drew Lock in training camp. Now that being and that being said, you still have what are OTAs going to look like? I would be surprised, Zach, if when you get to phase 2 of OTAs, you don't see the Broncos reporting pretty close to en masse and being able to have practices in OTAs. So I think you're going to in that phase of OTAs, which is you can't do team stuff right now anyway. Right now, guys staying away from the facility, just doing things virtually, most of the roster staying away. That's not something that really means a heck of a lot at this point. That it starts being something damaging on May 17th, but I think you'll see more guys back in there. And I think what the NFLPA would love to see is OTAs distilled down to phase 2 and phase 3 as far as workout, as far as bonuses and everything about being there in person. So I still think you're going to see plenty of work for the Broncos, the needed work that they have in the offseason, the needed work for any quarterback they bring in. That would help. I would say probably with both Fields and Jones, they're more accurate passers than Drew Lock, certainly than Drew Lock was coming out of Missouri. it's entirely possible that they get in and they're more accurate passers than Drew Lock is right now. And that's something that I think is going to help both. I would say for Fields, instead of 4-1, I'd give him 3-2 odds, and I'd probably say the same for Mac Jones, about 3-2 odds that they take the job by week 1.
So Drew Lock is still the favorite with both of those guys. Slight favorite.
Still the favorite, but it's slight. He's better than a coin flip, but it's not something where you're, pardon the pun, locking it in that he's a starter in week 1.
Right, and that's very fair. Mace, I would put Fields and Jones as the favorites over Drew. Maybe flip it. Maybe 3-2 odds for Drew going up against those guys. I think they would come in, and yes, the weird offseason would hurt them, but I still think by the time training camp rolls around, those guys would be able to win the job at the end of camp. And
strangely, even though I think Fields is the more likely quarterback to Denver than Mac Jones, although our friend James Palmer has got Mac Jones in mock draft that he did. I actually think that Mac Jones would have, if we were going to like go beyond and save and beyond, kind of straight up 3-2 and say, is one slightly ahead of the other? I'd put Mac Jones ahead of Justin Fields just for this reason alone. He already has chemistry with Jerry Jeudy. He's not starting from zero with Jerry Jeudy. Justin Fields is going to start from zero with every wide receiver, and so there's going to be some time to build up that chemistry and cohesion, and they're going to have to make sure they give him snaps. I mean, I would hope this. If they draft Fields or Mac Jones, Zach, I would hope, even though it may not make Drew Lock happy, if Drew Lock is still around, I would hope that they're splitting the snaps, because you want to start that process of building the timing. Mac Jones, of course, though, like I said, with Jerry Jeudy, he has the leg up. He's probably going to lean on Jerry Jeudy heavily, and that might give him a chance to show just a little bit more in OTAs / early training camp that gives him a better chance, a slightly better chance of winning the job in week 1 than Justin Fields. But I still think Fields is the guy with the higher ceiling. Still think he's the guy that brings a bit more to the offense, because he does have the threat to take off and run once things break down. And Mac Jones doesn't bring that. It keeps coverages honest. You're gonna have to spy on Justin Fields if you're a defense. You don't need to spy on Mac Jones, but you're gonna need to spy on Justin Fields, because he can do some of those Mahomes, Russell Wilson type thing, Josh Allen type things with his legs if he busts out, and he can make an explosive play with his legs. And that's for me a big reason why I've got Fields ahead of Mac Jones, is because of that. It's because of that threat, that additional aspect that he brings to playing quarterback. And also Justin Fields, in terms of the accuracy metrics, Zach, is right there with Mac Jones when you dive in. So and that's another thing. Like I said, these two quarterbacks stepping in are probably more accurate passers than Drew Lock has been to this point.
Yeah, but without a doubt, Mace. All right, I want to wrap this conversation up with one more ranking. Rank those 3 guys in terms of how likely they are to be drafted by the Denver Broncos. Obviously, taking Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson off the board.
Okay, I'd say Fields 1, Lance 2, Jones 3.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to take a similar ranking, but one change. Fields, the clear front runner, number 1 for the Broncos. Number 2, I'm actually putting Mac Jones, just from the conversations that I had. This shocks me too, Mace, because I did not think that this was the case, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Mac Jones from conversations that I had. And then I'm putting Trey Lance just right behind Mac Jones. But I think that the gap between 1 and 2 is huge, where the gap between 2 and 3 is extremely small.
And one thing also, when we're talking about these quarterbacks, is a reason why Fields is number 1 is because he brings the mix of high ceiling plus readiness to go fairly quickly and help fairly quickly. And when you bring the coaches' input into that, the coaches, even though there's admiration for Trey Lance's skill set and potential, you've got a team that's coming off of 4 consecutive losing seasons, 2 with this coaching staff together. So if you're on that side of the equation, you want somebody who could help you right now, upgrade right now. And Fields and Jones both bring that in some way, that potential upgrade right now. Whereas clearly with Trey Lance, even though there's a lot to like about the attributes he brings, the jump that you'd be asking him to make from 27 starts between high school and college, from North Dakota State to the NFL, only 1 year basically as NDSU starting quarterback. That's something where realistically you're looking at it on the Steve McNair type of plan, because he came out of FCS as well and was known as 1AA at the time, and the Oilers didn't deem him ready for 3 seasons until year 3. I don't think it'd be that long for Trey Lance, just because you can microwave things a little bit more in the past. But you're also, if you draft Trey Lance, he's not somebody you're thinking about helping you this year. And in the coach's room, they want somebody who can help them right now. Justin Fields helps this team right now, and it's possible. And Justin Fields, you don't have to squint to see the possibility of Justin Fields leading this team into a wild card playoff game as a rookie with everything around him. And if they draft Mac Jones, I don't think you have to squint to see that possibility as well, that you're there in mid-January going on the road at Kansas City or Buffalo or Cleveland or Baltimore, and Mac Jones is leading the way too. But you don't see that with Trey Lance.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there, Mason. Man, I'm so pumped for this. People in the comment section are so pumped. Yeah. It is popping off. I see you, Nagalator. Hey there. Yeah. And make sure, if you're tuning in to us, to go on YouTube, because that's where the chat's popping off. That's where you get the best quality. And give us a like, a subscribe, and turn on those alerts to make sure you don't miss any live show. Thank you all so much for rolling with us on the live side of this. Mason and I are going to jump into the podcast section form, where we go for about another hour or so. So make sure to subscribe. Just search Broncos on any platform. We're the first one that pops up on the podcast side of things. All right, Mace, everyone for tuning in to YouTube, thank you so much. We'll talk to you guys soon.
We off?
No.
Oh, ever.